Basically, we've been studying the company a bit, and there is clarity in some aspects, and in other aspects, I think where we need clarity, we'll just ask about that. Starting with, sir, I believe that a lot of these new initiatives and programs have started, such as Run, Build, and Grow, and Innovate, Incubate, and Invent. And basically, we've seen that you want to enter the digital space now. So you are going aggressively on the digital space, and from being focused primarily on BFSI sector, you also want to shift to telecom and media. So currently, I believe our revenue mix is largely dominated by contract staffing, which is around 61% of the revenue, and then capture and indexing is another 20%. Record to report is another 15%. So could you just give us a little more detail about this capture and indexing and record to report? If you could explain this to us, where we are currently, and to be in the digital space, how much is it contributing right now, and how much will we need to invest to reach where we are?
Yeah, so maybe I think those numbers, maybe if I put it in context in the way the new 3I, how we have organized the businesses, you'll also see the reports, and even for analysts also, we'll be sharing it in a similar way so that it is easy for all of us. That's why I keep telling my teams as well. We need to align the way we report to our shareholders and investors to how we track our business has to be same. It can't be different, so it has to be absolutely same and aligned. So to your point on the revenue mix, my own case, we call it now the AAA, which is application automation and analytics, which is your old school ADMS testing lines of businesses, which is now repositioned to 2021, the way I look at it. And within that, of course, there is various lines of some businesses. Application is your application development, and we have your digital testing or assurance. We call it the service quality assurance, automation, and then we have analytics. In that line, predominantly, I think that is our mainstay, because that we have a bulk of our revenues from that, which is almost close to 60%. But it is not just contract staffing, because there are multiple engagement models, right? From your project-based revenues, if you ask me, 50% is all project-driven revenues we have. That's a good part also. Of course, we have, like any other IT company, we have time and material and FTE based and various forms of engagement models which are there. To your point, which is capture and indexing, I would rather call it business process services, because which is predominantly the back office BPO services which you have been doing, and predominantly for the bankers. So it's a BFSI, right from you take over RBL to all these are our customers today. Okay. We focus on the entire back office for the banks. And also for securities also. Say for example, let's say if you take ICICI Securities, we also support them in application development on the technology side. We also work with them on the back office side also in share registry to a lot of these type of back office operations. So both lines of businesses within an account. I'll just give you an example. In an account, we also do such businesses. And this especially is now where we are now moving to digitize them. Say for example, what we have been very extremely human-centric. The biggest opportunity today is to kind of offer it as digital business process services, which is where I think the mix of, and one of the key metrics we are measuring is how many humanoids / digital workers we will have vis-a-vis the human workers. So that mix has to change, and that's the inevitable. And the whole idea is trying to see that how we will move the revenue per employee more by more digital workers and digital enablement. So if you look at our employee base today, almost close to say 5,000 as we speak, and our biggest challenge is we need to change the revenue mix, because predominantly we have been the mix of, if I can call it, versus onshore mix has not been in line with other IT services companies, right? See, since we were predominantly a product company and we also did services, right? That's the way 3i was, at least for the last decade, right? So it is unlike other IT services companies which are predominantly built around a huge offshore model.
Right.
So for us, the important change is that how you change the mix right now. So how do we change the mix? And from
what would be the mix right now, sir? If you could also advise on that, what would be the mix right now, offshore and onshore?
The offshore, onshore, if you look at it for us from a revenue mix perspective, unlike other IT companies where it will be, let's say, like 80% of the revenues come from offshore ODCs and delivery models versus 20% onshore. But for us, it's more like, it's like 50-50 right now. So that's a challenge for us, and it's an opportunity also. That's an opportunity. I see it only, it can go up, right? It can only help us change the mix and do that. And the second thing, we're also saying that, what worked for IT companies maybe 5 years ago also won't work for us today. So when we are now rebooting and kind of, repositioning ourselves. So that is where we want to position ourselves as a cloud-first, digital-first company. And the right shore. So we're not too hung up on where the shore is, whether it's offshore, near shore, it's the right shore. So now a lot of conversations we are now having, even in the American market, is where we want to provide, everybody's now moving to sovereign cloud. Everybody's saying the cloud has to be in my country, and it's all like that. So we want to focus on that, the sovereign clouds. And also we are now launching our cloud-based products like Nure Edge and Nure Desk, and all these are Oracle configured cloud-based products, which also kind of enables us to also build confidence for the right shore. So for example, right now we're working with deals where we want to deliver from Eastern Europe or US. The challenge is now then, the Eastern European operations has to be GDPR compliant. So the right shore, and in fact, I just got off a call from that folks. I was very surprised. The pricing of Eastern Europe right now is almost like Bangalore today, actually, for me. So, and the skill capabilities are also pretty strong. And for a small company like us, it's okay. Maybe for a large tier one, they may not be able to get 1,000 people. For us, I think we can get 100 people for sure. It's good enough with any of these countries. And a Java architect is almost the same cost or maybe slightly higher.
Sure. Yeah. So continuing on the employee aspect, so I believe your recent numbers from an employee perspective, the employee costs are around 80% of your revenue, right? And you would know there's a huge talent war that is going on, especially in the IT sector where wage inflation is really high. So while we are in the midst of this transformation, right, and changing a lot of things, right, from onshore, offshore to, digitizing the products and services offering, at the same time dealing with huge wage inflation. What do you think what would be the trajectory of employee costs over a period of time? And I know, I think what you referred to was to deal with employee cost as a percentage of revenue by dealing with revenue rather than looking at employee. Correct me if we got it wrong, but that is what I understood, that you would fix the revenue and by that way address the employee costs.
Absolutely, spot on for now. I think I'll kind of re-articulate this. In one of the investor calls, somebody challenged me by saying that you're already close to 700 crores, but your employee costs are high, of course. And I told them I'll give a guarantee or a blood comment in my own terms. I said I'll do 1,000 crores revenue with 100 crores PBT in 3 years. He said it's not good. I said, please understand where I am today. So the question which you asked, my challenge is not just growing from 700 to 1,000. My challenge also is to replace the existing revenue with more profitable revenue. So revenues have to be replaced because the current revenues have kind of a shelf life which needs to be kind of, which is not tenable for the long term. So we need to replace these revenues with better, profitable, digital-enabled or digital insight business. So that's very important. And that revenue, if you look at it, the growth side, which we are now building, the new deals, the people cost is only 65% or 60%, which is on par with industry. So that is the mix change we are doing right now. Very systematically, we are adding that business, but it will take time. Overnight it can't change, right? Because that has to. Maybe I see 1 year's time. This will change. At least move from 80 to 70. The way I look at it.
Do you expect a lot of attrition in the meantime while you are kind of refueling while being in the air? Do you see a lot of attrition above normal compared to industry levels, or do you see a lot of reskilling, retraining? Because that also has its limits.
The answer is both, Pranav. What we are doing is we want to be now that the new team, we have been almost the third quarter we are running together, right? And we are trying to fix, and a lot of new leaders have come in. We are trying to drive the change management within as well. So this run business, we want to kind of fortify that, and we are very clear what is going to be in the run business. And the only motive is that how do we change this construct of the run business to the point which you said today is at 80%. Can I get better margin enhancement out of it? Can I get more asset extraction out of it? So in the bargain, what happens, we also need to critically look at our human capital capability and competency. So there are three parts. One is definitely we need to upskill them. We need to kind of, do that, protect some of our top talents. And maybe we have to look at certain skill sets which are redundant, right? Now we can't carry them along, post 2021. So we'll have to figure that out. So we are in that process of, below that, there's a lot of loyalty in the organization. The other ones are also, that's mutual, Pranav. So we need to figure out how to kind of balance both the worlds, both voluntary and involuntary.
Got it. And what would be 3i's proposition to attract talent, given that there is this talent war that is going on, and you're competing against some of the big
I'll answer that in my grow and build. Okay. So we want to be very focused. The only way we will excel as a company today, see, after so many years in business, we have been $1 billion company almost close to in 2007-8. From there, you come down to 100 million. There's a classic case study, right, as a company. Now we want to get back there, right? So we cannot do what we were supposed to do in the last 5 years. So we have to stay ahead of the curve. So now what we're trying to do is, can we do something different? Can we kind of, change the way we want to kind of, run our business? Change the culture. So the important point is we want to build this culture of, professional entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship. So that's the, fundamental, theme in which we want to attract people. So people, the grow and the build side will be people who will join us to be entrepreneurs. Even as unit head would be an entrepreneur. We want to build that type of culture. That's the only way we can differentiate ourselves, attract the best talent, and that's working. And now the compensation plans also have to be worked around. In fact, as I'm speaking, we are kind of gotten a consulting organization to help us restructure our compensation plans. So we need to, the traditional plans won't work to attract talent. If I want to get a top talent from a tier 1 player who's sick and tired of working there, he wants to work with us as an entrepreneur, then I need to really change the way I kind of compensate him. It's not about the hike he gets on his fixed pay. It's like, what is that he's going to make 3x or 4x or 5x times in the next 2 years as he goes through this. So we are doing this change in compensation plan, not at senior levels, but even at mid levels, and even at individual contributors who are kind of, very prime. So that's a key change we are doing to attract talent. The second thing which we want to also focus is, we want to stay away from these crowded metros. So as I'm speaking to you, we are trying to do three-way, partnership in terms of tier 3 cities, where we want to work with, organizations who can stitch this entire supply chain of tier 3 engineering colleges or management schools. They will kind of pre-certify them, bring them on board. We will assure the supply chain. We are talking to them. In fact, we want to take a strategy of building 4 hubs one in south, maybe deep south, one in east. We already decided in Guwahati or Shillong or somewhere, because these are fantastic opportunities. A lot of tier one folks are not focusing on this. And even if I take Maharashtra, I can talk about one in Satara or Kolhapur, instead of all of us killing ourselves in Mumbai and Pune. So we want to pick up these areas and build COEs. So for example, we are talking about building an Oracle COE in Northeast. And we want to build some of the automation COEs in Deep South. So we want to build these COEs which are across your infrastructure management, application management. And what happens is that, let's say we go ahead and hire 200 people. And once you do a kind of a skill assessment, everyone could be at various levels. The second thing, this will keep our cost low. And the third thing, the loyalty and attrition for us in these cities will be very huge, because we are creating jobs out there. Because there's no jobs. Now all these kids have to travel either to a tier 2 metro. If I take a Tamil Nadu example, they have to go to Coimbatore or Madurai or Chennai, or you take Northeast. Now all of them who study there, we have all NITs, IITs and IIMs in Northeast. There's no jobs. They all come all the way to Bangalore or Hyderabad. I got IIM, IIT kids ready to work at 50% of costs. If I give them back a job in Northeast, they're all ready to go back. So we'll reduce the cost there, and it also kind of increases, loyalty level as well. So this is some of these experiments we're doing in India. Now, as I'm speaking to you next week, you'll come across, we're signing up some contracts with countries like, say, Malaysia and government, smaller countries, and we are launching some of these center of excellences there as well. So things like in Malaysia, in Indonesia, there are good talent pool which is available as well, to kind of supplement our shortage in India. And of course, I spoke about Eastern Europe, even in the Middle East markets also. There's kind of a bit of India fatigue there. They're looking for alternate supply chain. Jordan is something which we are now talking to the government, but we are very focused on any country we want to go. We are very clear, unless and until the government is ready to give us the support, the subsidies or whatever it is, we are not interested in that. If that is the case, we'll go and do business.
Sure, appreciate that. So if we look at where we are setting ourselves to, in the direction in which we are setting ourselves, right? So we are around 600, 700 crores in terms of revenues, and we are looking at $1 billion by 2030, by the end of this decade, right? So we are talking about around.
Just a caveat on that, just because the intent, the vision we set ourselves is organically we reach there, because in the past, 3i had become $1 billion through inorganic acquisitions, right? And also some of the CDR issues we went through in the last decade was this not so well managed acquisitions, right, as a root cause. So as a new team, we said that we will reach $1 billion organically. Now, of course, if we do an inorganic as well, somewhere down the line, once we stabilize our foundations and fundamentals, we'll do it much faster for now. Just kind of set the context. Yeah.
Sure. So if you look at these numbers, we are approximately saying we do around 28 to 30% CAGR over these 10 years in terms of revenues. And while we set ourselves to do that, we are looking at replacing our revenues, as you mentioned, right? So basically revamp our product services, bring in more digital and so on. We are also doing a lot of transformation from an employee perspective, right? Reskilling, rebuilding, finding new sources of revenue, holding on to the employees that we already have and so on, right? So this is and focusing only on services, while 3i erstwhile was also a products company. So this is, and you mentioned that we do it only organically and not so inorganically, right? So given the size of the ambition that we have, growing at around 30% year on year for almost the entire decade, and the other transformation that we are creating, or we will need to create to compete with other Indian IT and global IT services companies. We just want to understand, are we biting off too much in terms of ambition, or how? I'm sure the team has thought about the plan and confident.
That's a good question, Pranav. That's a great question. I'll answer that also. I'll answer that. The other aspect beyond the grow, I'll just set a context also, because in the grow part, as I said, we are working with all these New Ray brand of services along with Oracle, some of these, our Altiray branded, products, automation as a service, some of these lines. The other part is the build part. What we're doing is we are also building real next generation technologies. We've been able to bring on board a lot of entrepreneurs, as I said. In fact, those press releases will come shortly. And that we are focusing on cognitive computing, 5G services. And we have senior people like Amrita Gangotri, who's now mentoring us. She's the board of Tamla, so she's mentoring us to build this services, and that's our going to be our arrowhead for the future. And we want to be known as a company, Pranav, who are experts in edge computing. 2 years from now, that's what we want to do. We want to be experts in edge computing. Anything to do with edge, you will come to us. Whether it's edge analytics, edge security, it's edge real-time analytics at the edge, it's edge computing services. Anything to do with the edge, we want to be known as a player, and that is why we telecom, media, entertainment focus also, where telecom, media, entertainment becomes a customer as well as also the B2B2C. So that's what I'll try and answer how we will get that $1 billion breakup also. So if I just convert that to 7,500 crores, which you need to hit. Now, classically, as you rightly said, typically in a linear growth, you will say that you will never hit beyond 5,000 crores. It's impossible, right? And that is where we have got these three tracks running, Pranav. One is this current classic services business, which will kind of upgrade itself and, which will probably give us 2,500 crores on a traditional growth model. Now, the second 2,500 crores will come from our grow businesses, which are typically cloud first, cloud native, digital first kind of models, which are more higher margin. And we also want to attack the mid-market segments and the SME segments also to a level now where we will also get more top line and profitable top line. We may not end up doing 40-50% margins as we think in the other mid-enterprise to large. We might get 25 to 30, even still that is damn good margin from where we are today. For us, and that will give us volumes, if you ask me, in the mid-market and the SME segment. And that is where we want to look at 2,500 crores, because these are more or less pre-configured, standard, services for an industry. So if I take manufacturing, it's all pre-configured for them, and we want to kind of offer it in a box to them. So the kind of time to execution will be kind of shortened there. So that's the second 2,500 crores. The third area is where all these new lines of business we are talking about, right? And which is more in terms of cognitive computing, and that is where we want to look at B2B2B, B2B2C as well, through telcos or whatever it is. See, for example, B2B2C, I'll give you a small example. The New Ray Edge, which is a SaaS product of ours right now. Now, we can just sell it to an enterprise or sell it to a consumer through a telco. So that's going to be really, more heavy top line for us, because once you get into a B2B2C, that's where the acceleration comes for now. So for us, the third track, which is powered by 5G and cognitive computing at the edge, which is where we are now investing whatever little money we have in that, is where we are hoping to get that last mile 2,500 crores per annum as a breakup.
Okay. So would it be right to say, Thompson sir, that we're looking at productizing the services in the second and the third category that you mentioned? Are we looking at productizing the services, making it like as you mentioned, in a box or appliance kind of a model?
Absolutely. It'll all be productized. It'll all be New Ray, which is our cloud-led, productized, and it's kind of very short execution times, orchestrated for an industry. That is what we are aiming right now. Second, also, we will develop our own IPs and products. So the build part is also very clearly, we are super clear, because I'm not bringing all these entrepreneurs just to create productized services. They are there to solve business problems. And if you're lucky, we might even create unicorns out of it. So it's very, very clearly thought through. They have given the freedom. It's a kind of a balance between revenue versus R&D. Right now, we can't afford huge R&D. But as we build momentum, we will build products and create IPs as well, Pranav.
Got it. Okay. So we get how you will differentiate yourself. What are the risks though in the journey? So we clearly see that you would productize and build IP, also join hands with a lot of other entrepreneurs, right? So we see how you will differentiate yourself, but what are the risks that you would watch out for?
The risks are two-pronged for if we were a startup, it's very easy, right? You're starting fresh. It's easy for us to say we are like a startup. We'll build that we got. But see, all said and done, this new 3i from the old 3i. That's very important for us. So that insulating ourselves from past, it could be anything, out of the blue, a taxman can open a assessment and say, I want to reassess. Any risk, I'm just saying, you got a 25 years history, you need to be prepared for any risk which might come your way. So that's our top one. In my mind, we are building a global risk and compliance organization just to ensure we insulate ourselves, insulate the future from the past. That's number one. It's my single biggest risk because that's very important for us. Second, from a business perspective, once we have done that, we need to rebuild our foundation right now. So that is where we are right now. So as it is like we are just repairing the plane as we are flying. We need to rebuild the foundation because you asked a very important question at the top. Are we aspiring too much or are we trying to bite more than we can chew? So unless we fix our foundation and get our fundamentals right from as simple as your re-looking at your entire internal controls, re-looking at your entire processes. So the first step we are doing is whatever we are preaching to the world, we are now practicing ourselves. Whether it is process transformation, building the technology for ourselves, we are the first customer. So every practices we have told them before you launch it to the market, we use it. So we are trying to de-risk ourselves by try and buy for ourselves. We want to use it. In the bargain, we are also kind of building a strong foundation for us. That's very important. And we are on the journey and we should fix that very quickly because that is important for us to kind of de-risk ourselves from the scale and the pace at which we want to operate. Otherwise, that will kind of keep us pulling us down. So getting our foundations back on track is very important. Second one. The third is that though we are now debt-free and we're just kind of settling off all our past deal-related issues and we start fresh as a company, this residual capital is limited for us. So for us, we need to now, once we have a strategy, once we have a clarity, definitely we need to inject fresh capital into the company. So we'll have to figure out that and how we want to do it. And we want to keep this grow and build as good as independent companies within the larger company. And then we want to kind of bring in the capital at the right time. So that is very important because only then our entire dream can happen the way we want to kind of progress. So, and of course, the final risk, Pranav, if you look at it, a post-COVID world, the single biggest risk I see is before we had the runway of transformation or disruption cycles where 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is. Now we have to really think ahead of the curve, very, very ahead of the curve to kind of de-risk ourselves. So that is why we want to kind of keep the build organization focused on thinking ahead of the curve and not have revenue focus on them, because if I have revenue focus, then they get distracted into more tactical services revenue. So that's a risk for us because we need to generate enough profits on the other side to ensure the build guys are not distracted. Because they get distracted, then we are not future-proof. That's a big risk, the way I look at it.
So,
absolutely.
Capital are you looking out for in the coming few quarters, or are you thinking of any more investments, and what kind of dilution would one see in the next, say, 2 or 3 years period?
See, it's still very early days, Mayank, but, on the roadmap, definitely we need to look at it, because once the dust settles down, we are very clear about it. We need to have a kind of an investment roadmap for sure, because for our growth strategy, our investments have to follow. But, broad level, on a very high level, we have not really thought through it. Maybe I can take those questions when we meet in Q4, because we are planning for the next financial year also, the AOP plan and all that, and we can also divulge more concrete plans. But the answer is for sure, we want to raise capital. KPMG is advising us on the entire global restructuring, because we are now restructuring the entire old subsidiaries. We are coming up with the new subsidiary structures, and which is fit for this strategy. So they are helping us with all that, the insulating the past and the future. So once that plan is ready, then we'll be able to kind of go to the next level in terms of investments and capital and how do you want to do that. So maybe the next time around when I speak to you guys, I'll be more than happy to share more details. By the time all this.
So with the current size of the balance sheet, we are at 700 crores kind of a revenue. So with this current size, how much we can scale it up to without any further raise of capital?
See, this easily, if you ask me today, we can definitely scale it up to 1,000 crores, which I spoke about, the 3-year target we are talking about. So 1,000 crores, we can do it. The capital will be required more so on the build side, Maya. I don't think we need any capital to run our current run and grow business. But the build side is where we need capital for sure, right? Because, say for example, we are setting up a IIT, Chennai 5G incubator. We are taking the research part. See, we can go set up a small one with say 25 seaters with our current finances. But if I have to expand that, I need capital. As an example, I'm saying. Now, we are putting a small one in IIT Guwahati. We are doing one in all this stuff. But to make them 200 people or 250 people or for more stuff, that I don't think we can do that. Our current balance sheet can't take all that.
Correct.
So I have just sorry to interject. So at current rates, what are we quarterly? What are we investing for this vision? And are we expensing it through the P&L or it's going to our balance sheet? If you could give that quantum. And
Great question. So the entire build part we want to do through the balance sheet only, because it is fundamentally we are building IP. Okay, we're going to build IP with products or platforms. So all these IIT research park and all these ones are all focused on that. So that will come through the balance sheet only.
Okay.
Right? We'll analyze it and we'll bring it because the current P&L can't even fund it. If you read it, it can't fund it. It can't.
Exactly.
So can only take care of the run and grow to the point your colleague asked. At the max, we can drive our current business from 700 to 850 to 1,000. That's all we can do, if you ask me.
And so currently, what are we investing on a quarterly basis from the P&L? Are we investing anything at all?
No, we have. The build team is already set up right now.
Okay.
We have kind of earmarked almost 1.5 million right now. From
Okay.
Cash approvals we have got to set up these seed teams. So those teams are being set up right now, which is focused on 5G and cognitive computing and edge. So already the first team is ready, the leaders have come in, so they are starting to work on it.
So this $1.5 million you're saying is the total absolute amount, or this is what we are spending on a recurring basis quarterly to maintain this?
No, this is what we have set aside for this financial year.
For this, okay.
For the seed capital to set this up.
Okay.
Because see, we didn't want that to get distracted with the regular operations.
Right. So, and you mentioned that you've got someone from Tanla Platforms as on your for your advisory.
No, not from Tanla. Amrita Gagodri sits on the Tanla board also.
Okay.
Now signed up with us as a mentor for the 5G cognitive computing services. So she's mentoring the team.
Right. So, but they are more on the CPaaS side of services, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. She happens to be there. Nothing.
Okay.
I
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She as an individual, she's an ex CTO of Airtel, CTO of Vodafone UK. So she's kind of mentoring us in the telecom 5G and cognitive space. She also happens to sit in the Tamla board. Just to clarify.
Okay, sure.
So do you expect our margins to be much better than other IT services sometime through this journey, because we're looking at productizing most of our revenues?
Yeah, absolutely, Pranav. See, I'll tell you some of the deals we are closing today. Because it's a mix of 2-3 things. One is we are transforming, and we're also cannibalizing revenue streams. Say, for example, some of the deals we are closed in cloud. I'll give you a classic example. We are cannibalizing the CSP, which is a low margin business. There is an MSP who's doing that business where he makes more margin. And there is a transformation guy who has also to help the company transform the cloud footprint. 3 people are there. Now we are trying to do these 3 things together. The CSP, MSP and the transformation guy. So we might end up in an average, say 40% GM margin as an example. But once we do that, we're also doing for a lot of mid-market companies where we are saying we will do it end to end. We just not take over your existing customers right now, we manage it for you. All new customers you onboard, I just give you one rate. So what happens, we'll grow along with him. So today I might migrate 100 of his customers, his entire cloud, I manage it. From tomorrow onwards, every customer I give a flat rate to him. I'm saying for every customer I onboard, I'm going to charge you $10,000 per month. I'll manage everything end to end. So for my customer also, it's very clear because it's standardized, it's productized. He doesn't have to go to 3 people. He just deals with us and he just focuses on his core business.
But isn't that more risk also, because we've seen larger companies doing that kind of pricing strategy where they would relate the pricing to the customer's business outcomes. So wouldn't this be more risky for somebody like 3i?
No, absolutely, Pranav. It is risky. But I feel that unless we take some calculated risk, we cannot differentiate ourselves. See, we cannot right now do what my peers have been doing and perfect for 5 years. 3i has missed the bus. Let's be very clear about it, right?
Got it.
So unless we pick these spots, but to your point, we want to be super focused on certain areas. Let's say even if I do, we will say we are focused on, say credit unions, banks. So we want to be super focused. We'll be focused on B2B platforms who are focused on, for example, this is a live case, they are, we are working with companies who themselves are B2B platform, right? Offering services to other enterprises. For example, in healthcare as an example, or things like that. So we always say super focused on some of these areas. And we also want to invest deep domain knowledge on that and stay focused in that. That's it. So we can't split as well.
Got it. And are we experiencing better gross margins in the newer deals that you spoke about compared to earlier?
Just imagine.
And by what factor would that margin increase be? So if earlier it was, let's say...
9%. So currently we're at 9% EBITDA, yeah.
See, look at it today. We are languishing at around 15-16% or wherever it is at the max. Some deals might be. So the current one, we did it. But right now, immediately some of the new deals we are winning, even with heavy discounting, because we are fighting against some top-notch competition as well. It's not easy. We are still making around 35%, 38% GM in some of the deals we close now. So there's a huge jump right now.
Okay. Yes, sir.
But the point is, see, what is happening, all this has to happen parallel. That's a challenge for us.
It is, sir. We appreciate that, and that is why we were very curious to understand your perspective.
Yeah. So
how's the pipeline, sir? How is the response of the market to some of the new offerings that you have, and how does the pipeline look like? So if we are looking at 1,000 crores in 3 years, with 10% EBITDA, as you mentioned, how does the pipeline looking? And do you see a lot of repeat customers in that?
There are. It's pretty good, I'll tell you. There are 3 tracks which are happening. See, some of the existing customers also are now starting to look up us and say, okay, because see, every customer brands you as a particular service provider, right? Even if you've been with them for 5 years, he thinks that you can only do this. Now, slowly, as we are kind of, building these capabilities, competencies, and educating them, slowly new lines of business are opening up with our existing customers also. That's a positive. Second, also, there's a lot of traction on win back. So that's a positive of having 3i Infotech name, which has been there for 25 years. So across the world, you would have had an MSA with somebody. So now you go back, oh, you guys are still alive, and maybe you come back to life now. So people are talking to us. So that's a positive for us, Pranav. You know, instead of being a ranked new startup, they know your name. So our ability to kind of, you know, create a recall and tell them, boss, we are alive and kicking and we are back in action. It's easy also. So we are doing that. We are now running a win-back campaign as well. So where we used to have an MSA or we still have an MSA, we don't have a statement of work. So that's a second positive which is there, Pranav. Third also is now we are creating new markets for ourselves. Like I said, we are very focused. We say, boss, I'm not going to go fight with the tier 1 guys in large banks or whatever it is, unless an Oracle leads me or some other large player leads me. I'm super focused on my mid-market. I'll focus on my credit union banks. I'll focus on my community banks, as an example, I'm saying, in USA, and things like that. So we want to just pick up battles in our own target segments, in the mid-market. And that is now opening up now, because that area, we are not facing such heavy competition from the big boys also.
Got it.
Because see, even if you look at it there, ultimately the battle is won at the local level, where a country manager or even a big guy, he might be saying, I'm a SMB guy in a tier 1 player, but he's no match to when we put all our guys there. No? He's finished, because his headquarters is not going to rush any help to him. Whoever he was.
Agreed.
So I have a very in terms of this services, I had a very specific question. Is when you said that the new deals that you're winning are for a higher gross margin business. So at the beginning of the call, when I asked you, the contract staffing is a huge portion of our revenues. So where are we seeing this mix tilting towards that is giving us higher margins? If you could give us a little detail.
There are two parts. One is also even the traditional IT services, which is your contract staffing or whatever you want to call it, capital services, which all of us do, every company does. There is also a lot of deals where customers are now saying, why don't you convert it to managed services? You take it over, convert the entire contract. So contract restructuring is happening, engagement restructuring is happening. So everybody wants to see, can I reduce the total cost of operation? That's about it. So instead of having 100 FT, now you tell me now, give me a 10% discount and change the model and move on in life. So all this gives us more leeway and freedom for us to also kind of drive margins up, even on the existing lines of business, which I'm saying. That's one. Second thing is the new lines of business which we are now going in are all anyway high margin business. So once we kind of upsell and cross sell, these are high margin, relatively. So account-wise also we're now trying to figure out, how we can increase the margin. And secondly, also we are existing accounts where we are bleeding and we are ruthless about it. We don't want to kind of, waste our time with accounts where we are negative. We just want to get out of it. Anyway, we can go and wake up our old accounts where we don't have initiative and tell them, boss, we are back in life, we are alive again. So we can again start fresh there, rather than killing ourselves with existing accounts at low margin.
Right. Thank you.
Sir, is there any plan with Amazon Cloud or Google or Azure? I heard about the Oracle Cloud. So is there any plan with any of the other three players?
Yeah. No. So see, there are two parts, right? Now, if I say in my build business, we are building this Oracle, Nure. Of course, our bread and butter, we have Amazon practice, we have Azure practice. In fact, we won a deal right now in US, which is on Azure, nothing to do with Oracle. It's an Azure practice. So we have cloud in a box for Azure. We have teams in Amazon also. Google we don't have. We have an Amazon and an Azure. Both we have. And in fact, Pranav, Nure 3i, just for your benefit, we have this 2-1, 3i plus and 3i. Nure 3i is built on Amazon bare metal only. It is branded as our cloud, but built on Amazon bare metal. We got our own hyperscalers by which we are optimizing the cost by 25-30%. Some secret sauce of ours. And we add in our pass. So both the tracks are there. But Oracle is more a strategic partnership for us because we are betting very heavily, and it's usually they are also reciprocating to us. In fact, we are the only two, apart from Wipro, we are the only guys who are in APAC Oracle co-sell partners. So it's a privilege for us. And we're also taking a lot of countries where Oracle is not there, creating very niche sovereign clouds. So it's a kind of a head start for us. But to your point, we have Amazon and Azure practices independently as well.
Are margins comparable in both the businesses, or is one higher than the other? Whether it is
Marathon is strategic for us is higher, but if we go in Amazon and other where I do the bare metal, where I just get the bare metal, I use my hyperscalers, then my margin is very high. But if I do a straight away, it's just low end business, just volume business.
Yes.
Yeah. See, our money actually comes from migration more than that's the example I gave you. The CSP, MSP, and the transformation. And the biggest opportunity now we are building the COE with Oracle also is on migrating their legacy platforms, right? ERPs. And how can be that partner of choice for ERP migration in the mid-market segment. And also we are building a COE for NetSuite. So in fact, we ourselves became a customer for NetSuite. The entire finance, we are now moving to NetSuite and we are building a COE around it. So you will get a sense of where we are heading.
Got it. Alluding back to one of the other questions that Kunal asked about investment, is there a ROE goal that you have taken internally?
Yeah, good question, Pranab. I think maybe I can answer that in Q4.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I will answer maybe because we are getting there, because obviously we need to get all those questions answered for us to kind of get into the journey. Hopefully, I'm just waiting for the KPMG report to come, and then we can start answering some of these points.
Sure, sir. Mayank?
Yeah.
Any more?
Yeah, no, that's it from my side. I had asked all the questions.
Sure. So, yes. So, I'm done too. Kunal, any other questions?
No, I'm done too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Thompson sir. It was we were excited looking at the story, and we wanted a chance to talk to you in person and get that. Get your side.
I think all of us are in Mumbai. We should all catch up for a coffee sometime. Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Ritu.
Thank
Bye,
you,
sir.
team.
Thank you.